Thanks. Minister, over the last 2 years, we have seen a shadow pandemic of violence against women. Yet, in many rural communities and whole counties, such as Carlow, there is no domestic violence refuge available. The Carlow Women's Refuge campaign, supported by Councillor Adrian Wallace, have long been pushing for this injustice to be corrected. Numerous reports and experts have recommended it. 2 temporary emergency accommodation units have been provided, but it's far from adequate. Do we agree that Carlow needs refuge?
Thank you, Last Corda, and thank you, Deputy, for the question. Just to confirm initially to the Deputy that my department has no direct involvement in the establishment of a domestic violence refuge in Carlow. I understand that in the main domestic violence issues are a matter for the Minister for Justice and are legislated for in Domestic Violence Act 2018. My department's mission is to promote rural and community development and to support vibrant, inclusive and sustainable communities throughout Ireland. A key objective of all my department's programmes is that they are targeted at those sectors, areas and individuals most in need and at providing effective responses to ongoing and future economic and social challenges through the scheme to support national organisations. This includes Women's Aid, Rape Crisis Network Ireland and the National Women's Council of Ireland. My department also administers the Social Inclusion and Community Activation Programme, and this is the country's primary social inclusion intervention. It has funding of €220 million for 2018 to 2023, and its aim is to reduce poverty and promote social inclusion and equality by supporting communities and individuals using community development approaches, engagement and collaboration. Also of some relevance is my department's Community Services Programme, which also supports community organisations to deliver local services and create employment opportunities for disadvantaged people through a social enterprise model. The programme provides a funding contribution to over 2,000 positions in over 400 community organisations around the country. My department is providing SICAP funding in excess of the 220 million as mentioned. This year €39 million was allocated, and I'm delighted to say that in budget 2022 an additional €4 million has been secured for SICAP, and this represents a 10% budget increase for the programme, resulting in an additional 60 community workers nationwide.
Thanks. And I accept that this isn't the Minister's, it's not the primary responsibility of the Minister. But the question is, as the Department for Rural and Community Affairs, you should be supporting the fight for rural communities to get the services that they need. And I would ask you to add your name to the list of those calling for women's refuge in Carlow. Obviously not just Carlow, all the counties without one. I'll give you some striking statistics. There are over 500 incidents of domestic abuse reported to Gardaí in Carlow in the first 9 months of this year alone, but no local domestic violence refuge for those who need it. Instead, people are being sent to Kilkenny, Kildare and even Dublin, causing unnecessary additional distress, uprooting their lives. The problem has been highlighted again and again. Father Peter McVerry described the situation, the absence of a refuge in Carlow, as scandalous.
Thank you, Deputy. And just to acknowledge your point, but also to add that since January 2018, 1,138 individuals have been supported through the SICAP programme in Carlow. The supports offered vary to the individual circumstances. An example of some supports are personal development, a lifelong learning course, health and well-being and other labour market supports. I would say that Carlow County Development Company carried out research in 2019 on family homelessness, which highlighted the plight of women affected by domestic violence and the need for a women's refuge in Carlow. They liaise with and refer women to the outreach worker from Amber Kilkenny Refuge and Carlow Women's Aid. Staff have supported women in crisis situations to access women's refuge services. And in their 2022 annual plan, they propose to commission research into the ongoing need for a domestic violence refuge in Carlow and what model would be most appropriate.
Thanks. This issue has been going on now and been highlighted, the absence of a refuge, for a whole number of years. Back in 2018, there was a report on the homelessness in Carlow by Dr. Brendan O'Keefe, which highlighted how women and children are often forced to stay in violent homes for the lack of a refuge. Tusla's own needs analysis in 2019 accepted that a refuge is, quote, the most effective means for protecting women and children. The Carlow Women's Refuge campaign was set up back in 2018. An emergency motion was passed by Carlow County Council in 2019. All the experts agree that a proper, full-time refuge that offers all the safety and supports, including childminding, counselling, is what's necessary in terms of safe accommodation for women and children.
Minister, to conclude.
Thank you, Deputy. Some useful points, I think, from the budget, particularly in relation to the Department of Justice. A funding package will be provided to extend legal aid for victims of domestic, sexual and gender-based violence. Spending on victim supports for people who have suffered domestic, sexual and gender-based violence is also set to increase by €5 million, bringing it up to €13 million. The sum includes €1 million to improve Garda Divisional Protective Services units. These are units now operating in every Garda division to provide a consistent and professional approach to the investigation of sexual crime, child abuse and domestic abuse. Funding for ongoing training for Gardaí in priority areas such as combating domestic, sexual and gender-based violence, an additional €3.3 million to support the work of the Legal Aid Board, including the provision of legal advice and legal aid service to victims of sexual offences. And another point that's of relevance in terms of rent supplement: if you are a victim of domestic violence, you will be able to apply for rent supplement on referral by TUSLA. Where an application is made, rent supplement will be provided for initial 3 months and will not require a means test.